The difference between consultant and coach is that the consultant knows everything and coach knows nothing. That's our starting gambit, right? Like, I don't need to know anything about your business because I'm not here for that. What I am here for is to grow you as a person. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are and whenever you're listening. This is the next episode of CardCast, a little podcast where Jed and I pick up a random card of the CO game deck and we'll talk about it. So we'll go very, very quick. We will shuffle and see what comes up and what is it that we'll talk about today.
Okay, so the episode that popped out from the shuffle, it was why a coach. So I guess the question we're asking here is why should you get a coach? And not everyone wants a coach. Not everyone wants to be coached. Not everyone can be coached. And I guess the conversation today is, why should you even think about getting a coach? So if you've tried to learn a language or learn an instrument or started a diet or tried to get fit, and you've tried to do that by yourself, how has that gone for you? Now, most evidence would suggest that trying to do something by yourself doesn't generally work. The vast majority of us need some sort of routine, rhythm, or accountability to really get something bedded in. Because, a diet is not about a diet, and getting fit isn't about getting fit. It's about the behavior change that puts you in the right situation, the right context, the right frame of mind with the right accountability to be able to actually do what you want to do. Wanting to do something isn't the same as doing it.
Yeah.
And the best way of actually doing it is to have that rhythm, routine, and accountability, which is what a coach brings. What are your thoughts?
Now you just covered the whole episode. Now I wanted to, when you brought that card up, I was like, it's a very, very existential question because we could reframe the card as why do we exist?
Very existential.
Yeah, very much so. Look, I think that there are a couple of things we need to talk about, right? Are they people who are wildly successful and they never had a coach? Absolutely. Some of us are just wired that way. Majority of us are not. How many top athletes go there without a coach? Right? The coach is an accelerator, because they can help you to pick up the right path forward. They can help you to select the next lever to push, the next book to read, whatever that is. Removing the steps might be the same, but they just become much more concentrated. And again, it's all about acceleration and time to value. And, you mentioned accountability, and I think that's a big one for me because I have a running joke with my personal trainer, which is that, hey, 20% of what I'm paying them is to tell me what to do, and 80% of what I'm paying them is so I show up, right? And I think that when I share this with Damien, he thought that I was being too generous. It's more like 90-10 rather than 80-20. But really, it is a big part of it, right? This is behavioral change, and behavioral change is hard, and doing a behavioral change on your own is harder still. We have our biases, we have our tunnel vision, we have our habits that we need to get out of, and without that mirror, without somebody who comes from the outside and tells us, it's not easy. That's why even coaches have coaches, right?
Absolutely, yeah. When you mentioned the sporting context, no Olympic team or no Olympic athlete, won gold at the Olympics without having a coach. The rugby teams, it's probably more of a thing over here than it is over in your part of the world. But they have a forwards coach, a backs coach, a scrummaging coach, a kick-out coach. That they have coaches for every single facet of the game because coaches bring something that the individual players cannot. It's that accountability. One thing I think we should spend a moment on is, what actually is coaching? Because a lot of people who say they want a coach don't actually want a coach. They want an advisor. So what's the difference between a mentor or a teacher or an advisor or a consultant, a coach? Well, in my mind, a teacher is someone who teaches something from something they've learned or experienced. And a mentor is someone who tries to impart their knowledge and experience into someone else. Normally someone more junior, but not always. Now, an advisor is someone who says, this is what I did, and this will work for you as well if you do it too. A consultant is someone that says, you should do this. This is what you should do. Whereas a coach is just there to ask the question that's going to get the right outcome for the person who's being coached. So when people say a coach, they want a coach, they often mean, I actually want someone an advisor. I want an advisor. And they're expecting someone to have experience in the industry or the situation or the context that they're in so they can advise them on what to do. That's not what we do as coaches. As coaches, we're asking the questions that get the right outcome, that we know where the answers get the right outcome for the coachee. Do you see it differently?
I see it similar. I think that this is a very valid definition, right? I sometimes explain that the difference between consultant and coach is that the consultant knows everything and coach knows nothing. That's our sort of starting, that's our starting gambit, right? Like, I don't need to know anything about your business because I'm not here for that. What I am here for is to grow you as a person. Right, as a leader, as whatever it is that we are doing, I am not here to fix your company for you. I am here to make you a leader who will fix the company or who will do that. I think that's the main thing. We don't show up and build them a strategy as consultants would, right? But we do some teaching, right? Or we'll point them to resources, but when we share tools. But ultimately, our job is for them as leaders to be in a better place when we leave than they were when we found them. And that's all it is about, right? Really, like, my main thing is that if I see people grow, if I see them stepping up, if they see them, I got this beautiful email from a mentee of mine after about 6 months working. And we described, what he's done last month, and at the end was, am I a CEO? That made my day, you wouldn't believe, right? It was just fantastic because that's what it is about, right? Like increasing the confidence, increasing the joy of what they're doing. That's what we're doing as coaches, and generally, happy, healthy, growing organization. You can consider it as the means to get there. For me, it's kind of a byproduct.
So, Milan, you're in that situation where you were a CEO and then you were a CEO who was coached, and now you're a coach. So you've got this unique perspective of the needs and the transitions from those different stages. So, as a CEO, what led you to get a coach, and then what led you to then become a coach?
It's so interesting, right? Because a lot of coaches we know are former CEOs who were coached, right? Because I think that as a CEO in both roles, or in both stages, like without a coach and with a coach, you see how much better it is when the coach is there, and you're saying, "Oh, I want this for more people," right? Like this was great. Regardless of the company and everything like that, the difference in the speed of growth, in the ease of progress, right? Because you're progressing, you're learning, and you stumble block here, there, but then a coach shows up and I say, hey, over there is a pitfall, go that way. You're missing this piece, so it will bite you in the ass in 3 months unless you deal with that now, right? All of those things are so important. And yes, they're delivered as coaching, which means that they're delivered as a skill. So the next time I came into a similar type of situation, I already have the thinking pattern, and on it goes. So as any young CEO, I thought that I was perfectly capable of doing everything by myself. And the more I learned, the more I realized that maybe it's not necessarily that. And I picked up Shannon's books, right? You were coaching at the time already. I wasn't. Yeah. I was in that place, and eventually I found my way to Damien and worked with Damien for a couple of years, and that was the inspiration. Again, realizing how different it is than when you have a coach, and I was looking at the impact of my coaching on my team, the fact that I was being coached with the team, because I always personally drew the biggest satisfaction, not necessarily from the P&L, but from seeing how people are growing around me. Because and then the P&L has kind of tendency to take care of itself eventually, right? So that was what drove me. So then when a opportunity presented itself for me to become coach, which I think I told that story. A friend of mine got a new CEO gig and asked me to coach him. Long story short, I was like, I don't know if I should do that. He said, I'll be your guinea pig. He gave me that, and it was 7 years ago, right? It's interesting how the journey develops. Then I saw that I can have the same impact that brings me so much joy, which is seeing people grow, and I can do it at scale. I can do it in more companies, right? In more people, and that was sort of the turning point for me. And then eventually I found my way to start doing this full time, and and the little cars are just extension of that. But that's that's where we are at today. Did I answer your question?
No, absolutely. And your last point about you can do it at scale was the reason I moved from running businesses to becoming a coach, because I loved running businesses, but it was also incredibly hard. It took a huge amount out of you.
Are you saying that coaching is easy? I didn't notice that.
I don't think it's easy. I think it's easier. Yeah, I think it's easier. And I mean, just finishing my thought there. For me, I loved what I was doing, but if I could do a lot more of it, then that was really interesting to me. So rather than watching and seeing and affecting one company's growth, I could now do the same for a whole portfolio of companies. And that was why I moved to becoming a coach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wouldn't use the word easier, right? Because yes, it might be easier for you or even for me, right? Because we found our zone of genius, and this is where we want to be. This is where we want to put our energy, and this is where we focus. And you automatically become better on things you spend time doing. You can't stop that. But to say that coaching is easy, because what we are trying to do is we are actually teaching our leaders to be coaches, right? Because they have to coach their teams and their leaders and so on and so on. The whole code cascading system comes from it, right? And which is why so many metronomic CEOs became coaches, because they were actually coached to be coaches first of their own teams. And then you walk away, walk away with those skills and say, you sell a company or you do whatever and say, well, I actually have this skill and I kind of like it. Not everybody does, but many of us do, and that's how you get there. Yeah, don't ever say that it's easier than running the company, because then people will start asking you for discounts. Man, don't do it.
They see the value they get, so the money is irrelevant.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually a good question. What is the value that the CEO gets, or in my case, CEO and the whole leadership team? Because I work a little broader, in a little more high touch scenario than you do. We know that we have a different style, right?
Yeah. Look, I think if I was to sort of answer that in one example, it's not necessarily what the CEO gets, but I'm often I get to know the CEO's partner, whether it's male or female, and the highest accolade I can get, and this happens quite a lot, is when the partner comes to me and says, "Thank you so much for what you've done. I've got my partner back, and our kids have got their partner back." So regardless of what happens day to day for the CEO, it's what happens around them. The impact coaching can have on their partner, their family, their quality of being in the world, their quality of life. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So quick question, Milan, can everyone be coached?
Does everyone want to?
No,
that's one part. If you don't want to, you can't be coached, definition.
Yeah.
And are there people who think that they want to be coached? I think that I've run into people who convinced themselves that they wanted to be coached, but the reality was elsewhere. I've run into people who did not have the capability, because they, by definition, if you already know everything, if you're already best, and all you just need is people to acknowledge that, right? then you need a PR agent, not a coach. So to answer the question, simply no, not everybody. On the other hand, if you have the desire and the willingness, then the help is out there and then magic things can happen, right?
So to wrap up today, and referencing a recent episode we recorded, if you don't have an assistant, get an assistant. And also, if you don't have a coach, you should go and get a coach.